The headline medical stories that affect you and your family. This is What's Happening in Health on Local 12.
Hey everybody, good morning. Thank you for starting your day with us here on What's Happening with Health. We got a great show for you of hope and healing today, from new research on wrinkle reduction to a filmmaker in-house for a documentary aimed at pointing out what we might need to change in medical care. So let's get right to it with our health headlines today. There is new research out this week which says working the night shift is bad for your health. The University of Colorado Boulder released research that shows working overnight and sleeping during the day alters 100 key proteins in the blood. That change can influence your metabolism, your immunity, your blood sugars. About 15 million Americans work nights. All are affected by similar issues: hunger, irritability, tiredness. Yeah, if you work this shift, you likely already know this. For the rest of us, it is a real wake-up call to be really supportive of those who do need to work these hours. It's hard on your emotions, and it's really hard on your body. Next up, a new report on breakfast. A study presented to the European Congress on Obesity says the more kids drink juice for breakfast, the more likely they are to be overweight or obese. Those who had juice at breakfast more than 3 times a week had a 50% higher likelihood of being overweight compared to those who did not. It's kind of a simple formula. A big glass of juice can be like eating 3 oranges at one time when it comes to calories. By the way, the researchers also found that those who skipped breakfast weighed more than those who did not. And while we're on the subject of breakfast, cereal, one of your best choices, even the kind you buy at the grocery store in a box. A report from Weill Cornell Medical confirms that you can get good nutrition and fiber and vitamins, but there's a catch. You have to drink the milk in the bowl. And that's because they actually spray the vitamins on top, and the vitamins float up to the top in the milk. And if you don't drink the milk, you don't get them. On now to our top story of the day. A team of healthcare providers at Mayfield Brain and Spine and Good Samaritan Hospital now saving lives with the help of cutting-edge stroke care. In a moment, we'll meet one of our top docs behind it, but first, here's the backstory. They were at home watching a movie when suddenly Ron Bird heard his wife Bobby make a strange sound even though she'd fallen asleep.
I tried to pray for her, and I couldn't. It was like God said, this isn't time to pray. This is time to call 911.
That call, and eventually the doctor who got called in, Bobby has no doubt.
He saved my life. He really did.
Dr. Andy Ringer told me he just happened to be on call that night. He's a neurosurgeon at Mayfield Brain and Spine. As he headed in to TriHealth's Good Samaritan Hospital, he asked for the patient's name.
And when it came across, I thought, oh my goodness, I know that name.
By the time he came in to greet Ron Bird, who was in a waiting room at the hospital,
And thinking to myself, this isn't real. I said prayer, and I said, Lord, I said, I know you're here. I've had a relationship with you, and I know you're here. And I said, but I need some reassurance that this is going to be okay. And about 20 minutes later, Andy come walking in. He said, I'm Andy, Mindy's husband.
Believe it or not, Mindy is Dr. Andy Ringer's wife. The person he was about to see in crisis was his very own Aunt Bobby. As Andy showed me on these images, it turned out Aunt Bobby had had a massive stroke or injury to the brain.
We needed to be aggressive, we needed to be fast, we needed to be able to get a hold of the blood clot and actually pull it out of the artery to restore the blood flow.
And if there was ever an answer to Ron's prayer, Dr. Ringer just happens to be one of just a handful of surgeons in the country trained to perform a breakthrough stroke treatment to do just that. After injecting a dye into the arteries to see on imaging where Aunt Bobby's blood flow was blocked, Dr. Ringer used a breakthrough tool like this one to remove the blockage from her brain. It is called a stent retriever. As this animation, courtesy of Stryker, shows, Dr. Ringer can go up through the groin area with what's called the balloon guide catheter. It helps control blood flow once they find the area blocked off. He can then use the retriever to remove the clot.
In some patients, probably a minority, maybe 20 or 25% of patients, even beyond 6 hours after the onset of their stroke symptoms, we might still be able to reverse the major effects of the stroke.
What's more is that Dr. Ringer says in some patients, even beyond this time, with this breakthrough treatment,
there may still be an opportunity to restore that blood flow and restore function.
And because strokes are one of the leading causes of disability,
this could have a significant impact on healthcare across the United States.
Aunt Bobby knows the impact and is still recovering months later. But she says thanks to her nephew Andy,
I know that there's someone there with me, and God is there with me always.
Can hear just a little bit in her speech that she's still sort of finding words, but looks like a full recovery, doing amazing.
Yeah, and Bobby did great, and we're really all so grateful for that.
Yeah, by the way, joining me now, Dr. Andy Ringer, Mayfield Brain and Spine. Thank you. I know
Thanks,
you are
Liz.
busy, you're like in between surgeries and all the rest.
That's all right.
But to be able to advance this story, we have to keep sharing some great information. And you
Sure.
mentioned there's a couple things about stroke survival and even in that aftermath of 24 hours. Tell me about that.
Sure, stroke care has come a long way, even just since the time that Aunt Bobby was treated, and really in large part that's due to two major technological changes. The first is that stent retriever or other devices like it that you showed on the video that allow us to get a hold of a blood clot that's blocking a critical artery, causing a major stroke, and by pulling it out of the artery, we restore blood flow before there's permanent damage to the brain.
Okay, so we're in some video now, and you use imaging to find it, or what do you do?
Sure, we start off with a procedure called an angiogram. That's where we put a tube or a catheter into the artery of the leg down in the groin. And by using x-ray guidance, we can navigate that tube into the arteries of the neck that feed the head and the brain, injecting a dye into the blood flow so that we can see that blood flow on x-ray.
So if she comes in and it's been even a little while, you can still examine whether the clot's intact to be able to retrieve it?
That's correct. So we've recognized for some time that the earlier we treat a stroke, the better. And for many years, we thought that had to be just within the first few hours. And these devices allowed us to be more aggressive in those larger strokes, the big ones with large blood clots that wouldn't break down with medication, that wouldn't respond to medical treatment, and to be able to rapidly restore blood flow, thereby reversing the effects of the stroke. The second major technological change that came along was new imaging studies that allow us to actually measure the quality and amount of blood flow to the brain and identify those patients who maybe even beyond 6 or 7 hours still have territory of the brain that can be saved, that can be salvaged. And in some patients, that might be true up to 24 hours.
Which is remarkable for a stroke, because for a long time we thought we had just that short window.
That's right. Just as recently as 20 years ago, we thought we had only about 3 to 4 hours to be able to treat a stroke, and that was with a medication called TPA, or tissue-type plasminogen activator, that turns on your body's ability to break down blood clots. But that was a relatively weak tool. So with large strokes, it just didn't work that well. It wasn't until we had these technological developments that allowed us to pull the clot out en bloc as one piece to be able to restore blood flow rapidly to where we're able to treat these major strokes.
Well, I got to say, we feel lucky that you're here in our community and you can do these things and you have a team trained. We know that you're still sort of in the process of being able to reach out, do some telemedicine things to rural areas as well.
That's right. It still remains true that access to this kind of care is one of our major difficulties. Getting patients to the centers that can provide this kind of care has been difficult. Cincinnati has been blessed for many years because we've had such a great stroke team here, being able to treat strokes, and Cincinnati's been on the forefront of stroke care for many years. We continue to try to do that, but we recognize that bringing that care out to more people so that we can provide these emergency services where people live, that's part of Mayfield's mission and why we're partnering with hospital partners around the city to do that.
Well, you're doing a great job. I know we have a link with more information if you'd like to find out about Mayfield Brain and Spine and Dr. Andy Ringer. You're super busy. Thanks for sharing part of your day with me.
My pleasure.
I feel really lucky to have you here. More importantly, to have you in our community. All right, well, that's a top story, hard to top. But coming up next, just who's getting the newest wrinkle remover? Look good, feel better. Coming up on What's Happening in Health. Hey, we got to real quick though first tell you there is some new research on berries today. We call it berry good news. A study in the Annals of Neurology found women who consumed 2 or more servings of strawberries and blueberries a week delayed memory problems years longer than women who did not. Hey everybody, welcome back in Look Good, Feel Better today. A surprising shift in who's getting Botox these days. Botox is a drug prepared from the bacterial toxin known as botulin. Dr. John Mendelson, a facial plastic surgeon, says one of its top uses.
It is frown line and forehead.
mainly because, as you can see, as it's used on Josh Habig, it temporarily paralyzes the muscles to reduce wrinkles.
For me, it's just a minimal line that you can't see anymore.
But just who's coming into offices like this and getting this procedure might really surprise you. According to new reports, it's not just your grandparents, older adults, or women. This new report says somebody else is getting it. And maybe, like Josh, they feel more that rather than why get it, why not?
I think it's living your best life. It gives me a little pep in my step to amplify everything else I have to bring to the table.
Dr. Mendelsohn says there are likely several reasons more men are coming in for Botox, from ads targeting guys to competitive job markets.
Certainly competing in the job place, age is a determinant for men as well as women, and so we see a lot of men who are considering retiring or 5 years from retiring, or interestingly enough these days we see men who are in the computer science world. They're only 40 years old, but they're old by standards.
I think it's more so generational. When I look at my generation, I think we, in terms of self-care and regimens, are very different, I think, than, you know, our parents' generation.
The one danger, according to Mendelsohn, overdoing it. Once those wrinkles are gone, you won't likely want them back. But a word of warning.
If you look at his right side here, he still can animate.
You also don't want that frozen face look. Don't want that. Botox prices, by the way, have come down from years ago. And depending on how much you need, it can be anywhere from $300 to $1,200. For cosmetic reasons, it is not generally covered by medical insurance plans.
I come in, I get pokes all over my head, and then my hand, and then my foot, and then my cheek. In the cheek one, it helps me for my smile. Because
Coming up next, a new movie that highlights a new way to provide care to children with cancer. In fitness news today, it's a great day to get a dog. Harvard researchers found those who own a dog are 11% less likely to develop heart disease. This was discovered during a 12-year study. Apparently, our dogs just force us to get out and get some exercise. On now to a breakthrough documentary that could make a big difference in how we give care in hospitals to cancer patients. Doug Dearth, a filmmaker for a new documentary, is here. He explores acupuncture in what's called getting to the point. Here's a quick clip.
So I come in, I get pokes all over my head, and then my hand, and then my foot, and then my cheek. In the cheek one, it helps me for my smile. Because my mom found me in the mirror doing this. My mom said, "What are you doing, kid?" I'm like, "I'm trying to fix my smile."
And I said, "What's wrong with it?" And he goes, "Does it go up?" And I said, "Okay, well, let's talk to Ruth about it."
We told Ruth, and then she said, "I can start doing pokes in his cheek to help him get the other side up."
Well, look at that. Those pokes joining us. Doug Dearth, thank you so much for being here today. Quite a story, and that little guy, so compelling. This is your passion?
Yeah, it sure is. It sure is. I love working with people like the families that I've gotten to meet. You know, they show such courage, but also spreading this message and education about integrative medicine and how important it is.
So for people not familiar, we're going to give you a place where you can watch the rest of the movie, which is really good. But you started this all as a journey to bridge the two with acupuncture, or with East and West, or what was sort of the mission? Yeah, the mission was really to shine a light on how traditional Chinese medicine and our Western medicine can work together and be integrated to actually provide an overall better care and quality of life for people recovering from things like stroke and cancer. So yeah, this was about cancer. You were working with some interesting muscles in that, but you mentioned you got into this because your own brother had a stroke. Yeah, my brother Devin had a stroke when he was 40 years old, a brainstem bleed. This was about 8 or 9 years ago, and his family was having trouble getting the amount of care he needed for his recovery. And I had read about a program in China, and we took him all the way to a hospital in China for 4.5 months, and I made a documentary about it called 9,000 Needles. But I learned a lot, and one of the things I learned as I traveled around the U.S. screening that film, I
became aware of some amazing programs happening right here. So I always said, if I'm going to do a follow-up project, I want to make sure it's educating people on the programs that are available here. I didn't want to be the guy that was saying, go to China.
Right,
you know, I wanted to really expose and bring to light some really amazing programs that are happening right here in the U.S.
And we have a second clip which has some of your providers that seem to really be supportive of what you're saying. Listen to this.
There is no other hospital that has Chinese medicine mainstreamed the way Children's Hospital does. In the emergency room, in the neonatal intensive care unit, in the pediatric intensive care unit, any doctor at any time can go in and click a button and order Chinese medicine for their patient. And that's truly unique.
My general philosophy to trying to take care of my patients is to try and bring every possible positive treatment to them that I can. Unfortunately, we still have a culture where many of these ideas that are sort of not mainstream are sometimes actually critically reviewed by their physicians. I don't think that anyone really should have any kind of a philosophical problem with looking to any kind of a practice that has the ability to improve quality of life of their child. Therefore, I think if any healthcare provider really questions that particular aspect, that they really have no barriers that should limit them from bringing traditional Chinese medicine into their practice.
That is powerful stuff, and I know you have a way people can see it now for free. Tell us a little bit about that. We've got a web address to give to people. It's the Acupuncture Now Foundation.
Yeah, and the web address is acunow.org, and there's a link on there where people can watch the film for free. That was the goal, to get as many people to see it as possible, so we wanted to offer it for free.
All right, we have a link to that at local12.com. I can't thank you enough. I know you're in Ohio, but you had a little bit of a drive, so thanks for being here today.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Awesome to share your passion, and we look forward to the follow-up as you do more of this.
Great, thank you.
All right. Turning now to that busy summer travel season. The Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter in our area now have a partnership with a new place many say is really about hope and healing. It's in Washington, D.C., and it's called the Museum of the Bible.
I was a prisoner and he gave me freedom.
Perhaps no one can speak more to that life change than Adam Nathaniel Franklin Lane.
For 9 months I was in a cell, maximum security.
Now a free man, Adam shared how he found what he says was God's grace as we toured the Stations of the Cross exhibit at the Museum of the Bible.
You know, he was with me. The more I read that book, the more it helped me out.
And that, Executive Director Tony Zeiss told me, is exactly why this museum is attracting so many of all ages.
This is like Disney World for Catholics and Christians.
All stages of life.
To see a museum about the Bible, which is the most read book in the world, is really interesting, and I don't think it's been something that's been done before.
All people with faith.
It guides my decisions, I hope.
And many, according to Dr. Zeiss, with no faith at all.
We don't advocate any one faith tradition. We don't advocate any one religion. We just advocate the Bible, and we think the Bible will speak for itself.
The Museum of the Bible is 430,000 square feet, nestled just a few blocks away from the Capitol in Washington, D.C. It is floor after floor after floor, designed by biblical scholars with one godly goal in mind.
Our mission is real simple. We invite all people to engage with the Bible, its history, its narrative, and its impact.
It took 7 years to build this museum.
It's the third largest in Washington, D.C.
It is free to get in and takes no government money.
We want this to be a museum that talks about the Bible freely, openly, accurately, and with authenticity.
That authenticity allows you to see how the Bible was written, printed, and how the stories might have happened.
For not only eating, but also for dyeing our clothing as well.
Those stories eventually give way to the struggles that people have had sharing the Bible over time, as well as its influence on our culture, music, fashion, and so much more today. You know, there's a lot of history here, but do you feel like the Bible's still really relevant today in your life?
I think it is.
Which brings us back to Adam Lane. So you believe that the Bible can change lives?
I know that it can.
And when something changes your life, what you realize in the Bible Museum is you simply can't help but want to share it.
Once you know something works, then you're just going to use it, you see? And he made it work for me so much, so intensely that I can't deny it.
You can sign up for an online visit, a timed visit. They accept, again, no money, but they do accept donations, so there's no charge for the visit. Coming up next, high-tech health, a heart device that is saving lives. In high-tech health today, a device being used at Cincinnati Children's Heart Center, making a big difference for patients who otherwise might not survive. You are looking at the HeartMate 3. It is inside the heart of Brandon Collinsworth, keeping him alive.
Come up like a week before I needed it, so worked out perfect, yeah.
Brandon needed it because this team of pediatric heart surgeons at Cincinnati Children's Hospital had run out of options. They needed to keep his heart from failing.
Instead of being born with 4 chambers of your heart and 2 pumping chambers, he only had 1 pumping chamber.
So Brandon's team asked him to be the first patient in the world to try this new assist device.
And it's the first one that's completely levitated, meaning that the rotary is floating in a magnet. It never touches anything else.
So you can hear the device, it's a continuous hum. It's like a mechanical noise.
Brandon let me listen in to what's happening inside his body. It does have a different sound. How do you describe it?
Like Pac-Man.
That's probably a good description.
Yeah.
The best part? His heart is pumping. That HeartMate 3 appears to be doing its job. Proof right here.
See, this is all the fluid in his lungs, and then all of that is cleared up because he's no longer in heart failure.
Pretty amazing stuff. Finally today, Lighten Up with Liz, a personal take on a health story each week. And just a few minutes ago, you heard Adam Lane say this at the Museum of the Bible.
Once you know something works, then you're just going to use it, you see? And he made it work for me so much, so intensely that I can't deny it.
When I first asked Adam Lane about why he was at the museum, he said something to me I will never forget. He said, "I'm here because the Bible changed my life." When I asked him how, he said he discovered in it that there is an amazing God who runs this universe for true hope and healing. And we need physical, emotional, and spiritual support. So today, on this Sunday morning, if you're looking for hope and healing, I hope you won't leave out the part that Adam Lane said helped him heal. There is a God full of grace who runs the universe, and he knows your name. We'll be back same time next week for What's Happening in Health, and we hope that you will be too. Until then, everybody, lighten up and stay well.